Welcome to Where You're At, a podcast that highlights the work of alumni from the Journalism and Media Studies Department at San Diego State University. I'm Pete Frank Williams. Our goal is to share the success of alums, inspire current students with these stories, and connect students and alums for mentoring. And now, here's your host, Josh Shushan.
This week on the Where You At podcast, we're heading up to Los Angeles, California, and we're talking sports journalism, but not just any sports journalism. We're not going to talk this week about being at press row and covering a game, writing a game story or feature story. We're going to talk about kind of the underbelly of sports journalism, about court cases and someone getting arrested for a DUI and fights and obtaining video from police officers. I'm really excited about this week's podcast. Our guest is Edward Lewis. He's from the class of 2011, and he writes and is a senior producer for TMZ Sports. He's been there for about 5 years. Edward, thanks for joining me on this week's podcast.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me. I've always wanted to do kind of this look back on SDSU stuff and kind of remember how it went and explain how I got here. And I love this. I'm so happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's cool. A really good journey. It started at the Daily Aztec. We're not going to go in chronological order because I want to start immediately with what you do at TMZ. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, the highest compliment that I can give you in TMZ is that I think if there's a story that's out there, TMZ is going to find it. If there's video that exists, TMZ is going to get the video. And if TMZ says that this celebrity who we've wondering if they're going to pass away or not, once TMZ says it, then we know it's real. So let me start with the culture of the newsroom. What does it mean to work at TMZ where you guys always get the story?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. Like I used to work for NFL.com and I used to cover UCLA sports, and I always consider myself like a very, very professional journalist, as however you want to say it. You know what I mean? Like I always did things by the book, and I never wanted to do anything. The stigma around TMZ was always like, well, it's gossipy, it's raggy, whatever you want to call it. I got there and I've done more journalism in 6 weeks at TMZ than maybe I've done my entire life. I mean, these people get after it, and they get after it in the right way. And I really, really appreciate that. And I wish more people understood that about TMZ. So we get a tip. Generally, that's how we break all our stories. You know, like somebody will send in a tip and they'll say, hey, look, XYZ got arrested, you know, or XYZ did this, you know, and we spend hours vetting it. I mean, there's been some stories. I'll give you an example. Ja Morant was involved in a fight it's very public now. I'm sure you guys have seen. Ja Morant was involved in a fight with a high school basketball player at a pickup game in July. We got a tip about a week later that he was involved in this fight, right? He beat up a 16-year-old allegedly, and the 16-year-old was upset about it, went to cops, whatever. I worked that story for months. I mean, we were calling cops, we were calling the family, we were calling attorneys, we were calling anybody near the situation in order to get the story. And we finally got it. We finally broke the story. So what I'm trying to say is, the journalism that goes on at that place is incredible and it's wonderful. And I'm so happy to be a part of it because no matter where I end up, hopefully it's continuing down the road at TMZ, but going forward now, I have this ammunition of this journalism. Like I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like any tip we get is vetted thousands of times, and you call both sides, and you call attorneys, you call cops, it's just wonderful. I really enjoy being a part of it. You know, I've been at places where you do a one source story and that's kind of enough for your employer. And these people are not. It's a very, very cool journalistic environment where everybody is trying to make sure they have it right. Obviously you want to be first, but you want to get it right first. And they do it really well there at TMZ. So I've really, really enjoyed being there. It's been amazing.
When it comes to the tip line, how do these tips come in? I know you can't give away too many secrets, but what's the quantity of tips that you might get in a given day or within a given week?
And that's the beauty of it as well. Like we get so many people that write in, and I would bet you 90% of them, maybe even more than that, are just nothing. You know what I mean? Like we get a lot of like XYZ died. And then again, that goes back to journalism thing. We call reps and we call the people, you know, there have been times where we've looked up phone numbers. I'm cold calling people like, hey, like this is Edward Lewis at TMZ. Like, what's going on? Like, you live? You know, like and you don't really get that experience at a lot of places because there's not a lot of places like, you know, newspapers or websites don't generally get a lot of people writing in and be like, hey, I've heard this about this, you know, but TMZ gets a lot of tips. So we spend a lot of time getting tips. I would say on average at sports, we don't get too many, but on a whole at TMZ, you know, we're all in the same email chain. We probably get, I don't know, maybe 50-ish a day, 50 tips a day, you know, and I would say maybe one, if we're lucky, turns into a story. But man, when it does, they hit and they hit big. So it's so much fun to get somebody anonymously writing in, and then you go vet it and you turn it into the story and it blows up and people read it. It's amazing. It's a really highlight of my career.
So when the standards are this high for TMZ, explain to me about the process of getting hired. Why did you want to work there? How much do they vet you? How grueling are the interviews that they do to you to make sure that you're worthy of joining this newsroom?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a unique dynamic there because a lot of people I know at TMZ started like almost as PAs there, and they kind of just train them in that environment. You know what I mean? I'm one of the very few people that was fortunate enough to kind of come into it later in my life. I joined them at 28, I think 29. I'm 34 now. You know, they just knew that I had a resume and I was a journalist and whatnot. It's a unique environment. I don't know. I don't necessarily know how to describe it because again, they almost mold people as opposed to hire people. You know what I mean? It's more of a they want to grow them from the start instead of kind of making hiring journalists that are already there. So I'm kind of a unique case, but yeah, it's an interesting process. But yeah, they do obviously they vet you and they make sure that you're not going to go in there and go off the wall and write something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, as someone who works in minor league baseball, I can appreciate the idea that, like the Colorado Rockies, it's all about draft and develop. So they want to draft players and they want to develop them and they bring them from rookie ball to single A to double A to triple A to get them to the big leagues. And it sounds very similar for TMZ.
Exactly. It's very much so, yes.
Yeah. So for most of your career, you would interview coaches and players and general managers. And now it's lawyers and judges and clerks. Describe for us the dynamic of what it takes to get these stories from courtrooms, to get these transcripts, to get these videos.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, and this is something that I'm so grateful for TMZ for giving me this opportunity. I first got there and they hired me as a writer. It was just more of like people would give you information and you would write it. I've obviously been a journalist and reporter and whatnot, but that was simply what it was. But then I saw all these people getting stories from courtrooms and stuff, and I was like, well, teach me how to do that, now I know it like crazy. If there's a big everything's public record basically, right? Like you can get things from everybody as long as they're a law enforcement agency. Different states and different cities have different rules. Like Florida is far more open. If somebody gets arrested in Florida, I'll have the body cam footage, the mug shot, all that within hours. If somebody gets arrested in California, you may never get it. You know what I mean? So it is. It's a lot of work. I know you just have to do it. You have to know what cities, what states, what country or counties, what clerks will talk to you, what won't. By now, I've covered arrests in probably every major city in the United States, so I'm kind of familiar with all the PIOs and stuff like that. But if you know who to call and if you know where to look, it's easy enough. But it's a lot of work. And again, a lot of these records are only available after the case gets disposed. So what I mean by that is, let's say XYZ gets arrested. He obviously has a criminal case. It goes into court, and I follow it through the court. I have a big calendar, and if you know the court system, you'll have your arraignment on April 12th, but your trial won't be for April 12th, 2024. You know what I mean? So you have to follow these trials and court cases through months and years sometimes, and then you're finally able to request the body cam and the dash cam. And that's why sometimes like TMZ will be like, we'll drop a video from 2 years ago. It's because we followed it all the way to its end. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot of public records requests. It's a lot of like calling PIO. It's a lot of talking to people. But at the end of the day, if you work hard enough, you can get the information you need. You just have to make sure you follow all these court cases and stuff because there's a lot of them.
You just used the word calendar. I'm imagining some massive calendar inside the TMZ newsroom that just has color coded about like XYZ arraignment. Is it like that, or what? Or is
you are not wrong. No, that's absolutely what it is. It's not a physical calendar, but it's a digital calendar. But yes, it has all color coordinated. Mine are generally green, the sports cases, but obviously TMZ has theirs. They're generally purple. And there are just every day, if you look on our calendar, it's, for example, Willie McGinnis on Monday, he has an arraignment. I know that, so I got it in my little calendar. I'll check in. I'll call the court, be like, hey, what happened to Willie McGinnis? They'll say it was pushed to April 15th or whatever. And you move it there, and it's huge. It's a massive calendar. I mean, it's huge. There's probably 15 cases a day that we all look at. I'm responsible for the sports ones, and I love that aspect of it, just because you always want to break news as a reporter, right? That's like your number one thing. And if you could work hard enough at this whole calendar beat and court beat, you can get it done every single day if you really wanted to. So but there's a massive calendar at TMZ. Yes.
You mentioned earlier cold calling, and I want to talk to you about just the importance of knowing how to cold call correctly, because should I remember being at the Daily Aztec and you cold call someone, you're like, "Hi, this is Josh from the Daily Aztec," and you're wondering if they're going to call you back. You've worked for Yahoo Sports, Rivals, NFL.com. Just explain to me, when you call someone and you say, "Hi, this is Edward from TMZ Sports," do you pause, or just kind of what some of the different reactions are when someone goes, "Oh, TMZ is calling me right now"?
Honestly, always been favorable at TMZ. Believe it or not, you know what I mean? Generally, they are like, "Oh, this is great," and a lot of times I would say it's been better. You know, like when you call from Daily Aztec, you're like, "Why are you calling me?" When you call from TMZ, people are more interested. "Oh, I've seen your TV show. I get it. I'll talk to you." You know,
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, a lot of my calls are made based on people's arrest or an incident that they were the victim in a case of an alleged battery and assault or something. So it's not like fun to call these people. But again, a lot of these people want to get their story told. For example, the John Morant. There was a follow-up we got that he was involved in an altercation at a volleyball game. And inside the police report was the victim's name, and the victim's mother was listed on the report. So we found her number, and I gave her a call. I said, "Hey, look, I'm so sorry to cold call you, but my name's Edward. I'm with TMZ, and I wanted to talk to you about an incident with John Morant." She said, "Well, here you go. Like, I'm glad somebody talked to me about this, you know?" So a lot of it is like that, though. And again, we make a lot of cold calls about, unfortunately, to relatives of people who have passed away, you know, because we're trying to confirm. We get a tip that somebody may have died or something. We want to know, "Hey, is this true?" And again, most people want to let it know, yes, this is true. And they want to get the story out the right way. You know, if somebody passed away, they want to know, "Hey, look, thank you for calling me. Here's what actually happened." So yeah, cold calling, it was scary at the Daily Aztec and stuff like that, but having the TMZ weight behind you, it's much easier now. It's a better experience.
Hey, let's go back. Let's talk more about the Daily Aztec. Again, you were part of the class of 2011, which means that your final year was the year of the first Sweet 16 appearance for the men's basketball team. It wasn't always victories for the Aztecs, as I know from my time when I was a student. Let's reminisce. Tell me about what the Daily Aztec meant to you and how that was the start of things for you in your career.
My goodness, if I could, I would donate my life to Daily Aztec. I mean, what they did for me, I had started, I knew I wanted to be into sports, right? At 18 or whatever, you know, you play a lot of sports. I knew I wanted to be in it, but I obviously wasn't athletic enough to continue my career after that. And I was like, well, I need to write about or talk about them, do something with them. And I was fortunate enough, David Bitterman was the sports editor there. And I had contacted him over the summer, said, "Hey, look, I'm coming to San Diego State. I want to write for the newspaper." And he's like, "Well, let me see some stuff." He immediately put me on the women's soccer beat, and from there it was amazing. Like I really tried hard. I think that's like 90% of journalism is like, how bad do you want it? You know, like it doesn't take too much skill. I mean, obviously you have to have some sort of talent, but at the end of the day, it's how much do you want it? You know, and I think you could see that. And I got promoted to assistant sports editor kind of right away at my second half of my freshman year, and then eventually made it to sports editor. And I would say 95% of the things I've learned about journalism have come from that paper. You know, like there are very few things that I actually learned in the classroom. Obviously, they were helpful and good and stuff like that. And I remember the GSP test, the grammar, spelling, punctuation test. I still use to this day. But everything I learned was from talking, you know, with the Rocky Longs, the Brady Hoax, the Steve Fishers, the Kawhi Leonards, you know, Steven Strasburg's, Tony Gwynn. Even, man, Tony Gwynn used to just run me over after games, and it was a lesson to be learned, you know, about how to talk to people and all that stuff. So the Daily Aztec, I owe almost everything to it. And I'm so grateful for Daily Aztec, and I would do anything to keep that paper alive and anything to keep anybody that wanted to be a part of it. There's probably not a dollar amount I wouldn't spare to help them.
If there's a theme to this podcast, it's the grammar, spelling, punctuation test, and how much people struggled with it and how much they hated it at the time. But now they feel fortunate that it exists and that they learned where to put a comma and proper sentence structure.
And I stressed over it because remember, if you didn't pass it, you couldn't be a journalism major. So I stressed over it as hard as possible. But I'm telling you, to this day, I know how to use a semicolon. I knew where to punctuation. I mean, all that stuff. I hated that test so much, but man, I still use it, whatever it is, 15 years later now. Like, I love that thing.
Another thing about the Daily Aztec that I love so much is at the time that we're recording this, we're about a week outside of the Final Four run. And one of my friends from the Daily Aztec lives in Houston, and it was basically a slumber party for like 10 of us. And the fact that there were so many of us who were still friends to this day, very few of whom stayed in journalism, but we're all still friends. We all got together and we all got to watch Lamont Butler hit the shot and just go nuts together. Was pretty special. And so I'm wondering for you, the people who you worked with at the Daily Aztec, what those friendships are like, what the camaraderie is like for them to this day.
Yeah, to this day, I hired a senior staff writer and an assistant sports editor when I was my senior year, and I just knew we were going to be friends. I knew they were talented, but I also knew that like they would help me be friends, have friends. You know what I mean? And to this day, man, we talk every single day. And obviously, there's so many people along the line. I still play in a fantasy baseball league with the sports editor who made me the assistant sports editor. We're 15 years running now. He actually just texted me yesterday. Jeffrey Springs hurt his elbow, and he's giving me a little trash talk about it. So yeah, there are so many people at the Daily Aztec. I mean, there's I know there's a photographer, one of my photographers that used to help me with sports pictures, and now a Kansas City Chiefs videographer, and it's so much fun to follow these people. Yes, I bet you in my wedding there will be at least 4 Daily Aztec people basically there, and maybe 2 will be in it. You know what I mean? So I told you this a few minutes ago, but I would do anything for that paper. I mean, that paper did everything for me. It taught me everything. It gave me friendships, lifelong friendships. It was an amazing experience, and I would hate to see that thing go.
Well, that's a good transition to someone by the name of Eric Winter. And Eric's a very special person to both of us. And I think that this shows just sort of like the legacy of the Daily Aztec. Now, Eric Winter was the sports editor who hired me. Outside of my parents, he's probably the most important person in my life. He's like the older brother that I never had. Even though he was not a journalism major, he taught me a lot about journalism. I think he's taught me even more about how to dress and what the length of your pants should be, and when you put on a suit, like which buttons you should button with your suit. And he drives me crazy all the time, but then I also love him so much for what he's taught me. Even though you're 15 or so years behind us, tell me your experience with Eric Winter and what he did for you in your career.
He saved me, man. I do not know where I would be without that guy, and I truly mean that. I graduated and I was really successful at Daily Aztec. I had won awards, and I'd beat written for the football team and the basketball team, and a lot of people knew me, and I was breaking stories. There was the San Diego Union Tribune beat writer, and he would come up to me like, "Wow, that's a good job." You know what I mean? It was a very mutual respect at whatever I was, 20 years old. But I couldn't get a job. I could not get a job. I remember I actually applied to like Big Five, just to stay in San Diego. My parents wanted me to move out of San Diego. I'm not moving out of San Diego. So I applied to Big Five, but I was overqualified for a Big Five position. You know what I mean? So I was in this weird purgatory, and Eric had called me about just come up and have a meeting with me, and I was like, please. So I drove up from San Diego to LA, and we sat down, had dinner, and I think he just understood how passionate I was. It goes back to what we were talking about. Like journalism, of course, you need skills. You need to learn the GSP and the what's to say, what not to say, the syntax, how to write. But at the end of the day, how bad do you want it? This is a job that's not for a lot of people. I work 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. almost every day. It's a tough job. And I sat there with him and I basically explained that to him. Like, somebody needs to give me a chance. Just give me a chance. I need it. And I wasn't really pitching myself to him, but he was like, look, I might have that chance for you. I said, okay, what is it? And he was like, do you want to take over the San Diego State rivals.com website and cover basketball and football? I was like, of course, and he gave me that chance. And within 6 months, I had doubled subscriptions. He was like, do you want to go cover UCLA now? I was like, absolutely. And that's why I'm in LA now. But yes, he took a chance on me when nobody else was willing to. Not even Big Five would take me to stock shelves. You know what I mean? And I'm so grateful for that, man. I don't tell him that enough. I haven't spoken to him in a while now, but whenever I get the chance to, I really, really, truly do. I mean, he helped me so much. Just get my foot in the door. Like I said, I knew I had the skills, but getting that initial job is so difficult. And for him to be like, hey, do this, and let's see how you do it. Obviously I did it. It was wonderful. I cannot tell you how much I love that guy and how much he's meant to me and how much he gave me to start and where I am today because of him. I don't know where I would be without.
Rivals.com launched the careers of so many different people. And it's such an interesting model because it's not newspaper writing. And the idea is to get people to pay. You said the word subscriptions.
Right.
I mean, that's the model is putting out content that people are going to pay, and that's something that really, the newspaper industry has struggled with for the longest time is how do we charge people online? So tell me a little bit more about rivals.com and the types of stories that you do and what resonated that would lead to subscriptions for other people who want to follow in that kind of work.
Yeah, and that's the disappointing part about journalism, really. Like it's so necessary. Like journalism, like you need it. Like people have to be checked. Like stories have to be broken. But it's like, how do I get paid for it? And unfortunately, that leads to these subscription based services. And it was tough there. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was, you had to almost hold information. You'd break stories, and the ideal thing would be to just put them on Twitter, and get the credit for them, but that doesn't lead to subscriptions, because if you're getting away for free, you're not getting paid. That's a sad reality of it. So there was a lot of balance, a lot of give and take of, what do I give my subscribers versus, being a news breaking journalist. What do I do there? Like, what do I owe to the world? So that subscription stuff is very, very difficult. And I don't envy anybody who is still part of that model, because it's so tough to, like, okay, like I have this massive story, and what do I do with it? You want me to sit on it and put it behind a paywall? Like, and then obviously what happens is somebody will just ultimately copy and paste and put it on Reddit, and then you may not even get credit for it. So there's a big balance of it. What do I do? What do I not do? I kind of, if I didn't have it necessarily exclusive, I would use it free. But if I had it exclusive, I'd try to hide it behind a paywall and maybe get subscribers for it. But that is a model of business that I don't think to this day has been found out. I don't know how journalists balance it. I am so thankful. Obviously, I love Rivals, I love Yahoo and what they did for me, but I am so thankful to be out of that, because that's something I don't want to do. I want to be a journalist. I want to report things. I don't want to figure out, like, oh, I have to hide them behind a paywall now. No, like, get this information out there. So that's a tough one. I don't know how. Journalism needs to figure that one out. How can we get paid without, because the Athletic is a subscription-based model. The LA Times is a little bit now too. And it's just like, how do you make your money and how you do not? I don't know. It's tough. And it was a tough balance. I mean, I don't know what you hide and what you don't, what you put in paywall and what you don't.
It's time for a quick break from this week's podcast. I'm Amy J. Smith from the class of '98, and I'm a voiceover artist based in Los Angeles. I'm available for film narration, radio and TV commercials, documentaries, how-to explainer videos, and much more. You can contact me at amyvo.com. And now, back to this week's podcast. Here's Josh.
I had Dan Hayes on this podcast a few weeks ago, another Daily Aztec alum from the sports department. Yeah.
Love him.
And one of Dan's pieces of advice was, don't cover the team that's your favorite, right? So he grew up in the Bay Area, and he said, I don't want to cover the Giants. I don't want to cover the 49ers. I don't want to cover the Warriors. He wants to cover teams that he just did not care about as a kid. And so I'm wondering, for you, as you went from 1 year covering San Diego State to UCLA and then on to the NFL. And obviously you're not covering teams now, you're covering lawsuits and fights and videos, but
right.
Your advice about separating being a fan with being this reporter.
Yeah. I mean, that's tough. I never had that problem. And I kind of almost, don't get me wrong, I kind of somewhat regret it, because I was, from the day one I stepped on SDSU, I was a journalist, like I was at Daily Aztec. And so I didn't get to enjoy the Final Four as much as everybody else. You know what I mean? Like, I still kind of consider myself, I never really got to gain that fandom. I always try to separate, like you said, being a fan and working. But yeah, no, I don't necessarily mind if you're a fan of a team, as long as it doesn't show in your coverage. I do think there's some good that can come out of being a fan of the team that you're covering, because you care more about the smaller stories. You can put yourself in a fan's shoes or a subscriber's shoes or a reader's shoes, and that in turn helps. I found that at UCLA, I wasn't very into them. You know what I mean? I've never been a fan of UCLA. I don't have any loyalty to them. Eventually I was able to kind of figure out what the readers wanted, was what the subscribers wanted. But when you're a fan, right away, like, hey, look, I know this 4-string QB is a big deal because he came from Nebraska, like there's, these intricacies of these players. So I'd almost advocate, I know Dan was against it. I'm more of an advocate of cover the team you like, but just don't let it reflect in your coverage. Don't be like, well, this guy sucks, I can't believe he missed that kick. But I do think there's a big advantage. And then also, like, you care more, like I have a reason to get up today. I have a reason to go to the ballpark. I have a reason to go to the football practice, and I want to see these teams, and I'm invested in them. So there's a fine balance there, and you just cannot let it reflect in your stuff. Like, you cannot be that guy that's a homer always, or the other way. I follow a lot of people on Twitter, and I want to know where they're covering. I find beat writers are more the other way. They're overtly critical because they want their team to succeed so much. So, you just have to make sure you maintain that semblance of being an unbiased reporter. But I do think there is an advantage to covering a team you like. I think you innately know the team more, and you're able to be a better journalist and a better writer for it.
Yeah, take that, Dan Hayes. You're wrong. You're wrong, Dan Hayes.
Oh, Dan.
Another thing that I think is really interesting about sports journalism is balance when you are either working for a team or when you're working for an outlet like NFL.com. And I know that I've had this in my career, right? Like right now, I'm an employee of a minor league baseball team. And I'm not really a journalist because I'm doing play-by-play. At the same time, I have to describe what happened. Last night, the day before we recorded this, Fernando Tatis Jr. hit 3 home runs. And I got really excited because it's Fernando Tatis Jr. He's hitting 3 home runs. And even if he's hitting them against my team that employs me and pays me, and my team got destroyed, I still had to understand the moment. And the moment was Fernando Tatis Jr., while serving a steroid suspension, is in El Paso, Texas, and hit 3 homers. And there was people going nuts wearing his jersey and his dreads and everything else. For you, when you were at NFL.com in particular, look, that, if someone I feel like if someone in New York and the NFL office doesn't like what you're writing or what you're saying, you're going to hear about it at a certain point. And so maybe you can speak to just the balancing act of making sure that you tell the truth about what's going on, but yet you got to be careful when you work for certain places.
No, yeah. And that's, again, I mean, I wish everything was black and white. You know what I mean? I wish you could say this happened, this hasn't happened, this does, but there is, I mean, it's a sad reality of journalism as well. Like there are some times where you need to protect a source, for example, you know what I mean? Like these sources have helped you with whatever, like, they're just, it's not always black and white. What can I report? What can't I report? What's the juice in the squeeze here? For example, a few years ago, we knew that a player's dad had gotten arrested. The dad wasn't necessarily famous, you know what I mean? So it was like, all right, well, what are we getting out of reporting this? You know what I mean? Obviously, it's newsworthy that his father was arrested, but his father's not a celebrity. Like, does that impact our relationship with the player? Like, there's a lot that goes into the stories. Like, you cannot just fire away your cannon because maybe that prevents you from ever getting another story again. So I wish everything was in the black and the white. And well, this is happening, and again, 95% of the time you are like, I got to report this. I'm a journalist. I'm a news writer, but. There is a gray area to a lot of things. And even at NFL.com, I mean, there was, the whole Kaepernick kneeling thing was happening at the time. And there was a lot of like worried bodies in that office about, well, can we report this? How do we report this? Should we report this? It was controversial. Does it affect the NFL's bottom line? At the end of the day, the 32 owners own NFL.com. And if you write something that may affect them, does that change things? So yeah, there's a lot of conversations that happen about what can I write? And it speaks to, we've gained leaps and bounds about this, and we need to obviously improve it more. But it speaks to the diversity in newsroom. It can't all just be these single white straight males anymore. You know what I mean? You have to have women and people of different diversities in your office, and that way you all can come to a conclusion of this is right, this is wrong, this is black, this is white, this is gray, this is not. I think TMZ does a very good job of that. It's a very diverse newsroom, and there's a lot of age difference, there's a lot of experience difference, and you're all able to come to an agreement on whether this is good to report, whether it's not good to report, how is this going to affect us, how is the juice worth the squeeze. There's a lot. But yes, again, journalism, I wish it was easy. It's not, these are things you have to weigh every day.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I was flashing back to the 4 years that I spent co-hosting post-game Dodger Talk. And technically I was an employee of the radio station. I was not employed by the Dodgers. Yet I knew in the back of my mind, I had to be careful about what I said. At the same time, I didn't want to just be this apologist where everything is just this Pollyanna view of what's going on with the Dodgers. In the 4 years that I was there, year one was the first year that Joe Torre took over as manager, and they were a massive disappointment for the first 4 months of the season. Then they traded for Manny Ramirez and took off and went to the playoffs. The second year, Manny Ramirez gets suspended for performance-enhancing drugs, and so that became a huge story. Year 3, Frank and Jamie McCourt, the owners, go through a divorce, an extremely high publicity War of the Roses type of divorce. And then the 4th year, they weren't sure if Frank could make payment, and so Major League Baseball was kind of overseeing all of the finances for the Dodgers. And so here I am, along with Ken Levine and Joe Block. We are co-hosting Dodger Talk, and look, it's live radio. People are calling in. They can say whatever they can tell the screener, oh yeah, I just want to talk about Chad Billingsley's performance tonight, but once they get on live radio, they can say anything that they want. Sure. And I remember just trying to balance this idea of the fans deserve to have a voice, and especially when they're really frustrated. There was like basically an unofficial boycott of Dodger Stadium because fans were so upset. And I thought that it was important that we hear that. At the same time, you don't want to pile on too much. And I remember there was just times that people would have like this really great rant, and all I could say was, well said. I think there's a lot of people who agree with you. And you know, right. And your passion right now speaks to why this matters to Dodgers fans. I remember just constantly trying to think, again, I don't want to be an apologist and make it seem like everything is all right. I don't want to pile on because I don't want to lose my job. But at the same time, like, you know, let people speak. They've got something to say here too.
Yeah, no, and again, it goes back to like, how do I balance all this? It's very, very difficult. And again, I think it goes back to the whole fan argument. Like, am I able to put myself in the shoes? What is over the line? What isn't? Yeah, it's tough. Journalism is tough. I wish it were black and white. I wish there was no gray area. But yeah, like, how do I pile on? Do I not? When is there? How do I predict my sources? You know, obviously the Dodgers are at the end of the day maybe the ones that sign my paycheck. What do I do with that? At the end of the day, though, I used to intern for the Dallas Cowboys. I was a DallasCowboys.com intern, and I fortunately worked with some people there that were like, look, like they may pay me, they may sign my checks, but at the end of the day, they know I'm a journalist. You know, like they know that's my job. I have to report the facts. You know, and hopefully they understand that. And hopefully I'm not getting fired over it. And maybe if they do fire me, you know, maybe that wasn't a job for me, because at the end of the day, I really truly want to be a voice of unbiased and report what is happening and what's not happening and not have to worry about it. But, you know, we're all human. There's always going to be that element of, is this worth it? You know, so it's tough. You just hopefully surround yourself with enough people that can help you with the decision.
Yeah. I mean, I think surrounding yourself with that decision, I think that's the key phrase, because I know that I would spend a lot of time talking to Ken Levine and talking to Joe Block and talking to producers and just and even talking to different people on television, different mediums, where, you know, it's just kind of just bouncing ideas off each other, just because no one knows for sure where the line is. And I think one of my favorite quotes from Dave Chappelle is, you don't know where the line is until you cross it.
So you crossed it. Yeah.
Right? But I think it's just good to feel like, okay, is the line here? Is the line here? Is the line there? And just trying to figure it out. And especially when you're live, you're going to make some mistakes, you know, but I think it's coming from a good heart. Let me ask you this. What type of advice would you give? I mean, we're talking about how hard it is and how you don't always know where the line is. And it's a lot of tricky gray areas here. Just in general, maybe not necessarily about this, but give me some of your thoughts about advice to college students who want to work in sports, who want to work for maybe TMZ Sports, who want to cover more than just games. What's some of your advice to them?
Just work hard. I cannot tell you how many people we get through TMZ, the interns, whatever, new hires. They just don't care. Just care, man. That's half the battle. Just care. Just care. If you care, it'll all take care of itself. You know what I mean? Like, if you're worried about partying and the date that's going on the weekend, or improving my social status and what can I do with my social media, get followers and a blue check, you're never going to make it. You're never going to make it. You have to care. You have to want to. When TMZ doesn't get clicks on a day, I'm pissed. You know what I mean? Like, it's my job. I need people to come to this website. I need to break stories that matter. I need to care. Just care. Obviously, at the end of the day, you have to know where the period goes. You have to know where the sentence goes, how to not make run-on sentences, how to take quotes that matter, how to headline stories. But at the end of the day, you have to care. Just care. Just know that you wake up every morning and I need to do this. I want to do this. And if you don't care, you're never going to make it. I unfortunately, like, I've worked in the journalism field a long time, and there are very, very few that I started with that are still going in it. You know what I mean? Just because they lost their passion. They stopped caring. They didn't want to break stories. They wanted to you know, be social. They wanted to you know, improve their own status. They want to make more money. You know, I mean, journalism is the most lucrative profession ever. You know, if you care, though, that is 90% of that. Just care. Just come to work and want to break stories, want to break news. And that goes with everything. You're at practice. I can't tell you how many times I've broken a story based on just looking. Like, Brady Hoke has a wristband on. What's that wristband? You know, you talked about it. Well, my dog is sick. Whatever. You know, you get a story, an exclusive story. So just care. Just go to practice with an intention. With a purpose. You're not here to punch a clock at 9 a.m., stock shelves, and leave at 5 p.m. You are here to do something for the world, to break stories. So that's all I can say. I'm so passionate about that. Just care, just be thankful for who you are and do something with it. So that's my soapbox, man.
Oh my goodness. I love your energy. I love your passion. Just care. Just care.
Just care. Honestly, man. And just go to your job and be, I am so fortunate to be at a place. I have a platform where I can break stories. And when I break stories, people credit me for them. You know what I mean? And it's such a beautiful thing. And people need to understand that when they're at a place that gives them that platform, care, do it, use it, you know?
Man. You make me want to quit my job and go back into journalism right now, but I love my job. I care about my job. I care about
but you're so similar. Yeah, you care. You care. You know what I mean? Like it may be minor league baseball, but like I care. I want to know when Tatis says his home run, I give it. I want it. You know, so that's. Yeah.
People ask me like, well, what time do you have to be at the ballpark? And I go, you mean what time do I get to be at the ballpark?
Exactly.
You know, I get to be at the ballpark early. You know, right. I love being at the ballpark when it's empty and it's just a couple of groundskeepers that are out there who are watering the field, and it's just peaceful and serene before the chaos of the game. And, you know, I love being at the park. So.
Right. No, yeah. And there'll be somebody will scream in the newsroom, Antonio Brown's arrested. It's never like, well, who's going to take this call? I got it. Like, this is me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm calling the cops. I'll figure this out. You know, like you got to care, you know, you got to want it. And if you don't, you're never going to make it, because it's not enough money and it's not enough fame. You know, I mean, like, you got to have a passion for your job. And it's like that in every profession. You know, if you don't care, you're never going to be good at it. But journalism is specifically come to work and let's go, you know, be a part of this. So.
All right, Edward, let's wrap it up by bragging about some people from San Diego State. We've already talked about them off and on, but is there some other San Diego State alum who's out there doing wonderful things in the world that we need to know about?
Yeah, I'll shout out he took over for me after I left. His name's Antonio Morales. He's covering USC now. I believe it's for the OC Register. Forgive me if I'm mistaken, but I believe it's the OC Orange County Register. He took over for me after he was a really, really hard worker. Again, just somebody that cared. He wanted to be a part of it. He wanted to write stories, wanted to break news. And I love that. You know, like I said, a lot of the people that came in after me or really came in before me or came in during with me flamed out. And for him to still be going at it about a decade later, I really appreciate it. Also, shout out Dan Hayes, because I love what he's doing. I know you guys know him already from this podcast, but I'm a huge baseball guy. I love fantasy baseball, and I've followed Dan for years now at the Twins beat. And, I appreciate all his updates there. They've given me a little bit of tips. But yeah, Antonio Morales has been great. Dan's been great. There's so many, but yeah. Go Daily Aztec.
All right. So the one that I want to highlight this week is what I think is really neat when you've crossed paths with somebody, but you don't really know that person and you don't know that they are also a San Diego State alum. And I just recently learned, because someone had tagged me and this person on Facebook regarding San Diego State's basketball run. And this person is Heather Rajeski. I hope that I'm pronouncing her name right. Heather and I overlapped at San Diego State a couple of years. We didn't know each other. She also majored in journalism, radio, TV news, as did I, but I did not know her. We probably passed in the hallways at some point there in the old PSFA building. Then she worked for the Oakland A's, and she worked there at the same time that I was the beat writer for the Oakland Tribune. She worked for the A's for 16 years. She was a manager of promotions and special events. Then she got moved up to senior manager and then ballpark events. And now she's with the Minnesota Twins. She's the senior manager, marketing, promotions, special events. So shoot, she's worked in Major League Baseball now for close to 20 years, doing a wide variety of different things. We have crossed paths probably numerous times. I look forward to meeting her in person one day and just talking about San Diego State and Montezuma Mesa. But for Heather, super proud to know that she's out there and she's rocking it now in Minneapolis.
Love that. Shout out her, man. I love this. This has been an amazing podcast. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Edward. This was super fun. Keep doing what you're doing at TMZ and keep spreading the word about our school. And we're going to make sure that the Daily Aztec, I was so proud. There was actually a fundraiser, a GoFundMe. And so the Daily Aztecs were able to go out to cover the Final Four. So they may not have the funding that they had when Eric and I were students or when you were students.
Sure. But when I was there,
but we're going to make sure that they can still get out there and cover these events.
Love it. Yes. Anything they need, call me. I'm always there for you guys.
All right. Once again, that is Edward Lewis. I'm your host, Josh Sushan. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of the Where You At podcast, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Amy J. Smith from the class of '98. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and the artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know, where you at? Tell us about your career. Get involved in the department. You can donate your time or your money. You can mentor students. You can speak in the classroom, in person or Zoom. You can provide internship opportunities to students. Help us grow the department. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs!